retail banking, for example, making small loans.
As the racial wealth gap widens, disparities in home ownership continue to hobble minority communities. But in 2020, Wells Fargo made Christy Furco the first black woman to lead its home lending division. She's made it clear that she aims to put more black people in homes, and she understands the challenges of doing so.
I mean, there's an issue around being able to save for the down payment. So down payment assistance is really important. FICO scores, continue to be lower for Black Americans than they do for the general population. And so working on access to credit in that way, and then affordable housing supply. If people can save the down payment and get ready, there aren't the availability of housing, and with the limited housing supply market that we've seen, it's more and more difficult for that affordable housing supply to move forward. So those are the barriers that we consistently see.
Melissa Bradley is a serial entrepreneur who has also launched business development programs. She says the pandemic may actually accelerate the growth of minority businesses, creating more entrepreneurs ready to put investments to work.
While we say that entrepreneurship at large has somewhat been on a decline, I would say amongst communities of color has been one of the fastest growing aspects of their life. And probably for one, because it's an opportunity to oftentimes fill that gap where their paychecks don't meet all of their bills.
How do you create a system here where you can ensure that those folks who have good ideas can actually connect with the people who have the money who think they have good ideas?
There's been a plethora and increase in crowdfunding and the kind of democratization of people having access. Certainly, CDFIs have now been better funded and have received a lot of money and resources to particularly put towards Black and brown businesses. And obviously, again, unfortunately, because of George Floyd, you now have lots of corporations who have made commitments to be able to help Black entrepreneurship thrive, and so you're beginning to see more grant programs, you're beginning to see more alternative types of capital.
Many also think the Fed can do a lot more. Katerina Saraiva covers the economy for Bloomberg News.
We know the main regulatory entity for banking when it comes to lending to minorities is the Community Reinvestment Act, and that isn't really a powerful tool. There's an overhaul right now going on of the CRA. It's still kind of being debated right now, so we don't know what that's going to look like. So that'll really be interesting to see if they do give it more power.
How does that tone from Washington run into, influence changes on Wall Street and corporate America?
Oh, well, I think it's extraordinarily helpful when you get that kind of message from the top. But let's make no mistake, the person at the top can have a lot of focus, can be loud about it, but there needs to be that measure of accountability in the middle. By the time the narrative gets up to the CEO, the narrative has been changed. So you need to make sure that there's a measure of accountability in the middle if you want it to be successful.
That wraps up our special report on money and equality. But Bloomberg's coverage of equality, it doesn't stop here.
For more news, opinion, and analysis focusing on equality around the world, visit Bloomberg.com/equality. Bloomberg Terminal clients can use the function EQLY Go.
And we want to hear from you. You can reach out to the Equality team on Twitter at BBG Equality and on Instagram at Bloomberg Equality.
Thanks to everyone who spoke to us for this program.
And thank you for watching. I'm Romaine Boston.
And I'm Shonali Bassick. This is Bloomberg.
系统的风险。
Jack Ma had billions at stake from an impending world-beating Ant Group IPO. Yet, the Alibaba founder cast caution to the side and went straight for the throat.
今天的银行延续的还是当铺思想。
With government officials in the audience, Ma dared to criticize the very Chinese regulatory ecosystem that's allowed his tech empire's largesse, excoriating what he said is an antiquated financial system rife with risk-averse lending and bad oversight. And within days, Chinese authorities torpedoed the joint mega listing in Hong Kong and Shanghai.
Chinese authorities have abruptly halted Ant Group's mega IPO.
This is really a stunning turn of events.
And unveiled new antitrust regulations that led to a multi-billion-dollar fine for Alibaba and a drastic overhaul of its fintech powerhouse Ant. It's unlikely the speech alone caused such a regulatory reprisal, but it was perhaps ill-advised to be so frank. The IPO's $35 billion waiting in the wings. Talk about misreading the room.
Final straw, tip of the iceberg. It really backfired.
I think it is a watershed moment for regulating big tech in China.
Jack Ma, always a bit brash.
I never worry about the regulation. Why not? Because I know I'm a good boy.
We always step ahead of the regulators. We have to. Otherwise, we go nowhere.
He at last crossed not only the proverbial, but a new, real red line. Hello and welcome to this Bloomberg Television special, Red Lines, China and Big Tech. I'm Stephen Engel, here at the heart of China's big tech ambitions, Shenzhen behind me and the surrounding Greater Bay region. There's no doubt China's big tech platforms like Alibaba and Tencent are national champions. But, as we've seen in the United States with its own big tech companies, there's growing concern that unchecked big tech is perhaps growing too pervasive, too powerful, and therefore too ungovernable. The Chinese government is sending a clear message to its biggest tech platforms. Anti-competitive and financially risky behavior will have consequences. Fresh off slapping Alibaba with a record $2.8 billion fine and announcing Ant Group would be significantly revamped, Chinese regulators warned 34 other internet companies, including Tencent, ByteDance, Baidu, Meituan, Pinduoduo, and JD.com, that they too must rectify their anti-competitive practices, such as, in Alibaba's case, forcing merchants to choose its e-commerce platforms over competitors. Alibaba actually thanked the government for its oversight and promised to comply and move on. Regulators urged the other firms to heed Alibaba's example. We have
Yes, for Alibaba, the overhang is now the management, which is the experience, can go back to their normal business.
Like Washington, Beijing has a love-hate relationship with their tech companies, right? On the one hand, these companies represent China's successful modernization. They kind of represent China's growing global competitiveness, and Beijing can't afford to chop its champions off at the knees. But on the other hand, Beijing has kind of long struggled with